Okay, so I wanted to take a moment to talk about this SR character. Soul is actually a fairly good defender unit. Now, when you compare her to SSR defender units, is she the best? No, not necessarily. Would you use her in PvP? Probably not, but when it comes to PvE, like taking on raid bosses and stuff like that, especially the raid bosses that have barriers, I would actually recommend taking this soul along if you don't have a character for barrier removal, or if you just lack a good defender. She is a solid option. So this is like your free-to-play option, if you will, even though you have to summon for her. You're more likely to get SRs than you are to get SSRs, right? So most people will have SRs in plethora, even if they are free-to-play players, right? So this is your free-to-play tank option right here. And today we're going to be talking about how you guys should build her, what skills you want to upgrade first, what skill cards you want to equip to her, what gear you want to run on her, whether or not you should enhance her, what talent you want to do on her, and then of course, what teams will she fit on for PvE specifically. I'm not really going to talk about PvP, because you could run her in PvP, but like it's just really not a good idea. There's always going to be better options. Hopefully you can pull at least one SSR defender like Mars or something like that, who is going to be infinitely better than Soul. But Soul is still a very good choice, I would say, for PvE, okay? So her skill 1 is a single target attack. It's called Sand Strike, and it inflicts taunt on an enemy for 1 turn if the enemy has 70% or more mobility, okay? So that is a guaranteed taunt on skill 1 on an SR character, which is really good, but there's a catch. They have to have 70% mobility, okay? Which a lot of times is very doable, but I think that is honestly a decent skill. And then if we look at skill 2, it is another single target attack. It's called Cloud Strike, and it has a 80% chance to inflict taunt on an enemy for 1 turn, and then inflicts a reduced attack level 2 debuff on an enemy for 2 turns, and then also if you have her skill card, grants a Fortify level 2 buff for 2 turns. Now the thing about this is only a 80% chance to taunt, whereas her skill 1 is a guaranteed taunt if they have more than 70% mobility, right? So I'd say skill 1 is almost better for the taunt, but skill 2 is nice for the fortify and the reduced attack. So they do similar things, but skill 2 just does a little bit more. And then if we look at the special skill, it's called Raging Mother Goddess, inflicts a reduced magic attack level 3 debuff on an enemy for 2 turns, which is really, really good. That reduces the magic attack of the enemy by 52%. So that's solid, and then 50% chance to attack after inflicting barrier removal on an enemy. Now we do have characters, SSRs, that guaranteed remove barriers, right? But if you lack them, here's your free-to-play option, and you can increase that barrier removal chance by 30% and get it up to an 80% chance to remove a barrier by upgrading the skill, right? So overall, it's a pretty good special skill for an SR character. And then on her combined attack, she will attack after granting an increased magic attack level 2 buff. Now I will say, this is not very good because you're building Soul for attack, so it's not really worth it. Ideally, you want to build her for attack over magic attack. Ideally, actually, you're building her for defense, really, but for like the attack stat, you're going for attack over magic attack. And then for the affiliation attack with Charlotte, inflicts a reduced all attack level 1 debuff on an enemy for 2 turns, which is like okay because it reduces their attack and magic attack by 23%, but it's really not anything too crazy, so I wouldn't really run her with Charlotte for this particular combined attack. I wouldn't even really use Soul's combined attack. It's not that great. The rest of her kit is pretty good, but the combined attack is not. So in terms of upgrade priority, I would go for the special skill first because you want that extra chance at barrier removal. Then I would actually go for the skill 1 because skill 1 and skill 2 both just scale how much damage they do. They don't do anything else. So if you look at skill 1 here, it has attack at 90% and magic attack at 90%. And if you look here at skill 2, attack at 90%, magic attack at 90%. The only difference is on skill 2 here, it increases by 6% each time you upgrade it, whereas skill 1, it increases by 5% each time you upgrade it. But the thing is, skill 1 has a guaranteed taunt if the enemy has 70% or more mobility. And I would choose that guaranteed taunt over this, especially when you have to wait 2 or 3 turns to use your skill 2, whereas you can use your skill 1 every single turn, so you want to upgrade the damage on this skill. So upgrade priority, I would go special skill, skill 1, skill 2, and then last but not least, your combo skill. Now, in terms of skill cards to put on her, you could put hers on her for that fortified that you get right there. In addition to that, you get the 20% chance to inflict a 15% attack reduction debuff on an attacking enemy for 1 turn upon taking damage. So that's pretty good. It's just going to lower the enemy's attack, which can be very, very useful, especially in PvE when you're being attacked by like an attack all raid boss, right? So that's pretty decent, gives your team more survivability. But if you don't want to run her SR skill card, there are other options, of course. So one of those options would be Moonlight Necklace. It is very good for defenders. It applies 40 to 80% increased defense and 6 to 10% increased healing. One of the best general pool SSR skill cards you can get. So if you want to equip this to her, you definitely could. Another option you can run is Twisted Creed. This is Rady's skill card if you happen to pull that. And at the start of a wave, grants you a barrier equal to 15 or 30% of your maximum HP for 2 turns. Now, the thing is, you're not building her for HP, so it's not the best skill card, but hey, it's a little bit of extra something to help keep her alive, so that's an option you could run. And then last but not least, we have Mars with Survival of the Fittest. Applies a 4 to 8% Fortify to yourself upon taking damage, stacks up to 4 times, and the effect resets at the start of each turn, right? So this one's also a fairly decent option for Soul as a defender SR character, right? So those are kind of the skill cards I would run on her. Now, in terms of gear, the gear I would go for, I have used this gear set quite a bit lately. I think I used it on Black Asta, and I also used it on SR Vanessa, but you would also use this type of gear set right here on Soul. So I would build her for a gold defense set, and I'd also build her for a half regular defense set, and then for a half gold mobility set. Because SR characters don't have the highest speed, it's always good if you can to build them with mobility. And then since she is a defender unit, you are going to want to build her with defense and get her defense up as much as possible. And then in terms of other stats, you're going to be going for attack because you want to build this Soul towards attack as opposed to magic attack. Now, what do I mean when I say run a gold set and a regular set? Well, if you look right here, there's a gold star. Gold sets are generally better. This one gives plus 30% defense, whereas the regular set only gives plus 250 defense, not even a percentage. So gold sets are always better than regular sets. Where can you find the different sets? If you go over here to set, you can see a regular attack set, defense, HP, mobility. And if we look over here, a gold attack set, defense, HP, mobility. Okay, so these are the sets you want to build towards on Soul. And once again, build towards defense primarily. As your attack stat, you're going to want attack over magic attack for gear. Now, should you be enhancing this character or not? Let's take a look at her enhancement levels. So at 2 stars, when attacked by an enemy afflicted with taunt, which is very easy to do, inflicts a 5% reduced damage dealt debuff on them for 2 turns. And then if you get her to 5 stars, that becomes a 10% reduced damage dealt debuff on them for 2 turns, which is pretty good. And as you upgrade her, you get more endurance, which lets her resist more damage, which is just good for her overall. So in terms of enhancement, should you be enhancing her? Yeah, I would recommend enhancing her because it just gives her more survivability, right? Gives your team more survivability when she reduces the enemy's attack, and it's easy to get copies of SR characters. So absolutely, if you can enhance her, enhance her. Now, in terms of talents, you could go for either the attack plus 7% and the damage dealt plus 5%, or you could go for damage dealt plus 5% and the crit damage plus 10%. Personally, I recommend going attack plus 7% and the damage dealt plus 5%. Then on defense, I would just go the flat plus 20% defense and the stacking defense and crit resist. And then for the support tree, I would actually keep swiftness here. Grants a SP plus 1 buff upon having less than 2 SP, so you get your special points back for your special move faster, and that's going to allow you to do that barrier removal more often. So I would go for swiftness, and then I would also go for damage resist to once again just give her more survivability. Now, in terms of teams that you can run Soul on for PvE specifically, once again, because we're not really talking about PvP here, I would run her on a team like this. This is just an example team. Say you were taking on a red raid boss. You would want a mostly blue team if you could help it. You would have Lotus here for the speed down. You would have Julius here for the mobility down. You would have Soul here for the barrier removal if you ended up needing it. And then you would have William for buffing the team, right? So this team would work pretty well as a PvE blue team. It would also probably work fairly well taking on like the red dungeon, okay? So Soul could be used as your defender unit taking on the red dungeon. So this is definitely an option. Once again, I'll say it one more time. As for PvP, probably not too many great teams. I could see you maybe running Soul with like Asta, who does taunts or stuff like that, or another defender who does taunts, because then every time she gets attacked, she reduces the enemy's attack with her passive, which is kind of cool, but that's only if you have her duped out. Okay, so that might be a potential PvP option if you really want to run her. But yeah, other than that, I would just run her for PvE. So that's kind of like the optimal type team. More often than not in PvE, you're not going to be mixing and matching units. You're not going to have red and green units mixed in when you're taking on a certain type of raid boss. So this is probably the most likely team you will use her on in PvE. And that is Soul's build guide. If you guys did enjoy the video, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button if you are new to the channel, and thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.